Greetings, everyone. This is Richard Pelzer. I'm really excited today for everyone to join us in our Immigrants Are Us project, the G project, our public art project that we actually have. I have a very special guest today that is going to be joining us. So I can't wait to have him on. But for everyone else that's coming into the room or just new to the room, the G Project hopes to build and expand dialogue between people from all walks of life in order to begin to recognize ourselves in each other and each other in ourselves, because we're all immigrants. And this is what this project's all about. As I mentioned, it is a public art project, and I'll explain that a little bit throughout our dialogue today. But I would like to actually bring on the man. I'm looking forward to having this conversation and chopping it up. As we said, we have a lot of things in common, and he has an extraordinary story to actually tell. So, Mr. Washington, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Richard. How are you?
I'm
Thanks
doing
for
good.
having me.
No, thanks for participating today. I'm really excited. I really am. I'm very excited. So,
Thank
as I mentioned, we have a couple things in common. We both live in Harlem.
Yep.
So I think that's actually cool. We're both Virgos, so that's actually cool. And we're also born on September 17th. So,
what?
you know.
Twins, baby.
So it's very interesting. I know at least 8 or 9 folks that were born on September 17th, and every single one of them are super ridiculously cool. Like,
yeah.
I'm very honored. So if you would just share with all of our viewers today a little bit about you, and I know that you are a artist, you're a storyteller, you're an entrepreneur. I can go on and on and on. So
Yeah.
toss it over to you.
So yeah, my name is Milton Washington, and when someone asks, especially with all the different things that I do, kind of what are you? First of all, I'd say I'm a creative. I happen to make some money with some of my creativity, which makes me an entrepreneur. And I have a lot of interest in entrepreneurship because I think entrepreneurship is kind of one of the biggest tools against racism and getting on your feet and doing for yourself. So I do a lot of coaching and training in that area. I help people with their businesses get to the next level. But like I said, I'm a creative first and foremost. And I do some photography. I do some writing, but I consider myself a storyteller first and foremost. And because I'm a storyteller, I'm kind of I've been writing a memoir for the longest. Hopefully there's a deal around the corner soon. A memoir called Slickyboy. And like I said, I also do a lot of photography with my iPhone. So most of the pictures that you see on my Slickyboy Studios Instagram page, it's all from my iPhone because I'm not too interested in a lot of the technical aspects of other phones.
Okay.
So, but yeah, with that, if I were to say if I would put it in a nutshell in terms of me being an immigrant, I was born in South Korea to a Korean mother and grew up in South Korea until I was 8 years old. And then I was adopted by my family, now the Washingtons.
Okay.
If I had to do it more concisely, I'd say I'll give you the synopsis of the memoir, Slickyboy. So,
okay, well, before you get into that, I wanted to kind of get, because we're going to ask you that question, like, what is your G status? So I'm going to kind of back into that. But before I ask you that question, I kind of want to know a little bit about your business, because you also are, a trainer as well, right?
Kind of. I say kind of because I'm not a personal trainer.
Okay.
But I have founded a fitness program, and that fitness program is called Rokmil Fitness, and
Okay.
Rock is ROK, as in Republic of Korea, Mil for Milton-ah or Milton, and it's a system of full body movements that's very low impact, and it's put to beats, and it's centered around a stool that we call the Rock. That produces results really fast. Like after one session, that your body has changed. And that's Rokmil fitness in a nutshell. It's strength, it's cardio, it's flexibility, and also athleticism, coordination, balance, a lot of good things that ultimately that you want more of in life, so you can have really just kind of a better quality of life.
Nice, 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 nice. Okay, so for everyone that is joining us, Immigrants Are Us, as I mentioned earlier, is a public art project. And so what we ask the question, what is your G status? And G status really is generation. So today there's more than 40 million people living in the United States that were born elsewhere or somewhere else. And in New York City, there's 38% of our residents and 46% of our labor force was born in another country. So we asked the question, what is your G status? And G status, if you were born somewhere else, you're a G0. If you were born here in America as a first generation, you're a G1. If second generation, a G2, and so on and so on. And the reason we ask these questions, it gives us a chance to really be able to really figure out what we have in common and, you know, getting to know each other. So my question to you, Milton, is what is your G status? And if you would be able to share a little bit about your story, I think that would be really great, which is very fascinating.
So my G status is 0.
Okay.
Because I was born in South Korea and grew up in South Korea. And to summarize that experience, I'll give you the synopsis of the memoir.
Okay.
That memoir is called Slickyboy because Slickyboy is a term that Korean nationals as well as American soldiers would use for little kids running around on the streets, oftentimes homeless, in South Korea around these military bases called camptowns that would steal anything that you have because it's American. And in the late 60s and the 70s, where Korea was still very much a third world country, anything American was valuable. And as a soldier, you'd have to kind of really keep close attention to your valuables because of little slicky boys like me. So the synopsis of my story goes like this. A fatherless Black boy is born to a Korean prostitute a decade and a half after the Korean War, left to roam his camp town with a pack of homeless kids, little Milton-ah, fights, steals, and drinks as his mother works long hours. All into the age of 8, when he's adopted from the country that never claimed him by a Black military family from Texas, the Washingtons. So Slickyboy is about the love and the loss of one mother and the finding of another with a lifetime of living in between. So my G status is 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. From you actually leaving Korea and coming to America, what was that experience like? And, you know, if you would like to share a little bit of that, I think that would be really great as well.
Yeah, it's you know, unfortunately, I can't give you the real meat of all this because it's that question is so kind of instrumental in my adoption story and story getting out of South Korea. You know, it's a lot to it.
Right.
But I was adopted at the age of 8, and I had never been to school. And it was just my mother and I. And then when I was adopted, it's kind of a crazy story about around my adoption because the Washingtons that came out to St. Vincent's Orphanage for Amerasians, that orphanage to grab another kid, another Black and Korean kid that they had been adopting for over a year. Mm-hmm. And me and that kid had some static a few weeks prior to the moment of the Washingtons coming out there to pick him up. And then when they did come out to pick him up, I essentially just jumped into the car because I had these ideas of what my American father looked like. And when Captain Don Washington stepped out of the Ford LTD car that they had, to me, in my mind, he looked like what my father looked like in my mind. Okay. So I jumped in their car, locked all the doors, wouldn't let them open the doors, and cried until Gwen Washington said, you know, hey, Don, let's take both of these kids home and see which kid works out the best. with the family because they had 4 natural kids on their own. And then so I somehow figured out when they were gonna bring us back to the orphanage to make a decision. And that day of that morning, I ran away. And there was this big search for me that included military police, and they finally found me in a playground in a tube, asleep, and they got me out. And by that point, thank God, Gwen Washington kind of fell in love with me and decided to and talked her way into with her husband to keeping us both. So that other kid, that other Black and Korean boy, he was 10 years old and I was 8. He's my brother now, Joseph. And the Washingtons are my parents.
Wonderful.
So, yeah. So it's a that's kind of, and which is why I call the book Slickyboy, because in some ways I kind of stole my way into the Washington family.
Right.
But that transition of, never have been to school, didn't speak any English. I knew a few words. I knew dollar. I knew thank you. Give me, the kind of words that you kind of need to survive on the streets of South Korea around American soldiers. But in some ways, the transition was almost perfect because I didn't even know what Black was when I was in Korea, especially in the countryside. I knew my skin was this color, but I didn't understand Blackness because of my age and where I was.
Right.
But then when I saw Black soldiers for the first time, I fell in love. I fell in love with Blackness. And so I never really resented my Blackness. And then when I saw the soldiers, I knew something deep down inside that I had always felt, which was, as a little kid, even though the Korean kids didn't want to play with me, they didn't allow me to play with them. Like I kind of thought that I was superior because, as a little 5-year-old boy, I was built like G.I. Joe and they were built like regular Korean kids.
Right.
And I looked at them and looked at me and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Right.
So, and then to see grown Black men, grown soldiers, and then comparing them to the grown Black soldiers, comparing them to the grown white soldiers. As a child, the Black soldiers were simply just more exciting.
Right.
They seemed happier. They looked like what little boys want to grow up into.
Right.
So I always had this sense of like superiority. And then at the time I thought America was just full of Black people.
Right.
So but I also thought that America was gold cities that floated in the clouds with flying cars and sidewalks made out of gold that moved, and everybody was kind of like fat because you ate so much.
Right.
All the things that third world country people want to be, right? And so then when I got to Lawton, Oklahoma, I was just like, well, this ain't what I thought it was going to be. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it was still America. And now I had a family and now I can speak English. And now I felt like I can thrive.
Right.
And then I spent the next several years just trying to get adjusted into Blackness and American culture and all that sort of stuff. So it was an interesting transition for me, but it was very, very kind of easy for me in relative terms compared to a lot of Korean adoptees, including my brother Joseph, because he just had a lot more trauma than I did.
Right. Okay. And so one of the things that we always ask, our guests if they could bring something or share something as well to kind of connect. So I don't know if you would like to actually share, or if you have anything that you would like to share.
I would like to share something. There's just like what, the story that I talked about, me being a kid in Korea, there's a piece of writing that I have that I'd like to share.
Of course.
And then also, I want to kind of give you a sense of, this is my older Korean sister's wedding in about 1975 or 4. And
Okay.
that's me right there.
Wow.
That little guy right there. And that's my older sister. This is my grandmother, and this is my mother.
Okay.
So that's kind of crazy. And I just recently got this photo because I got reunited with my older Korean sister um, uh, who lives in Seattle. And she was taking care of our mother before she passed away 4 years ago.
Okay.
So this is a piece that I treasure. So that little boy that you saw, imagine that little boy in this scene that I'm about to read you.
Okay.
And right before this scene, my mother and I, we moved to a town called Tongnucheon, which is the camptown, a home of Camp Market, big military base. And I see my mother with one of these black soldiers, and I'm just elated. And then the black soldier gives me, to me, some of my favorite snacks to this day. Gives me Oreos, he gives me Fig Newtons, and he gives me Coca-Cola, which was gold on the streets. And because of the profession my mother was in the story, she tells me to leave the house now because they have to talk. As I walk outside, I have my Fig Newtons, and there's a dirt lot right outside of my home across the street from the front gates of the military base. And this is what happens. The screen door slammed behind me as I walked into the alley under the warm spring sun. I turned the corner to the dirt lot, which sat in between my building and the pharmacy. There I saw 3 kids, one much taller than the others, playing cheese, while 4 other kids sat nearby playing King of the Mountain in the silky soft dirt. The noise came from the 2 dakji players arguing as the tall one stood aside quietly. They must have been 7 or 8 years old, while the big one was 11 or 12. You kicked that dakji with your foot and you know it, a boy yelled, pointing a finger at the other. My foot was still. You're just mad because you lost again, the other returned. That's when the shoving began. But in the midst of the tussle, the taller kid, the one with the big square head and a tan face seemingly incapable of a smile, disregarded the fighting and stared directly at me. And as the boys dropped to the ground wrestling, the others gathered as exuberant cheerleaders. But the big kid ignored them all and walked straight to me. Hey, those are American, aren't they? He asked, pointing at my snacks. They are, I said coolly, hiding the exuberance of my first real conversation with another boy. Can I have one? Sure, I said, squeezing a cookie out of the wrapper. I'm Jung Kim Soo, and this is my gang, the T-shirt Alley Boys, he said as he grabbed the cookie with his filthy fingers while thumbing at the boys behind him. I looked around him as the cheerleaders were trying to separate the wrestling kids, one from a chokehold. I'm Milton-ah, and I live right here, I said with a nod towards the building behind me. I first saw you a couple of weeks ago, he said as he chewed his Newton slowly. Yeah, we moved here from Dongducheon, I said, as the wrestler who had the other one in the chokehold ran up to me and yelled, "Hey, let me have one." This is Moon Dae-jung, also known as the drunk, Kim Soo said, nodding towards the aggressive boy with heavy breaths. And this is Lee Chung-hee, also known as Stinky, he said, turning to the kid who had been in the chokehold as he approached with big eyes and a smile as if nothing had happened. Do you know why they call me Stinky? Chung-hee asked with a mischievous look on his face. But before I could respond, he lifted a leg and ripped out a loud fart, sparkling giggles from everyone. Just as the laughter settled, the first boy, Dae-jung, the drunk, leaned his face in and started. Do you know why they called me the drunk? He asked as he got closer. But before I could respond, Kim Soo cut him off with a forearm to the chest and nudged him backwards. Because your father is the drunk of Bupyeong and you're the drunk of T-shirt Alley. Now shut up and get back to your game, he commanded to the immediate silence of others. And as the boys backed away, Kim Soo turned to me and asked, so how did you get these treats? He seemed taller than before. My mother's American boyfriend, I said. I have a pile of American treats inside, as much as I want, whenever I want, I lied with a straight face. Well, then you should join our gang. This dirt lot right here is one of our home bases. He said as he waved. He said, waving to the area behind him. We have another in the cemetery in the hills and another in the middle of the train track bridge behind the paddies. Most of us are homeless, so we sleep wherever we can, usually at the churches. And when we get hungry, we either steal our meal or we get our money from the soldiers, he said, as the others smiled and nodded their heads with pride as they began to gather. Grown-ups call us Slicky Boys because they'll know we'll steal any and everything, he said as the others slowly converged. There's some rival gangs out there, so you're going to need to know how to fight too. Warmth radiated from my stomach as my grip tightened on my collar. There I was at the age of 6 with the prospects of my first friends in life, a moment I trained for years. And my black skin didn't seem to matter so much with these Korean boys. They fought and stole and found value in me for doing the same. With a chip on my shoulder from the need to prove myself and a habit of thievery, the opportunity couldn't have been more perfect, but it was. Because beyond the barbed wires of Camp Market might have been the keys to America. And if I was lucky, maybe the keys to my Black American father, too. It all converged right there with some dirty street kids who called themselves the T-shirt alley boys, hanging out across the street from the front gates of the U.S. military base called Camp Market, right there in that dirt lot next to my home at the mouth of the red light district called T-shirt alley. Timing is great. It's 420. Boom. Meant to be, baby.
Perfect. Well, again, Milton, thank you so very much for sharing.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this, and I know all of our viewers do as well. We're going to actually post it, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back. And
would love to. Thank you so much.
So, but for everyone, hopefully you guys will get a chance to like our page, our Facebook page. Please go to our website, which is gproject.org. Next week, my co-partner, my partner in crime, I shouldn't say crime, and my partner in all the greatness that we actually do, Alyssa, is going to be interviewing her guest, which is Carlos Dominguez. So we're going to be looking for Carlos next Wednesday. So it's every Wednesday until December the 9th at 4 p.m. for 20 minutes. Do you want to say anything before we go?
No, I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to be a part of the project, and I think this project is extremely timely.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, sir, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.